Hello, hello. Wow. There's always something that doesn't go correctly. Even if we did the shakedown, there was still something that didn't go perfectly. But we'll get it for the next time. Welcome to RTC Roto Labs, the first episode of our live stream sessions. As I mentioned to you guys yesterday, we're going to have different formats going on in this new segment. We're going to have live interviews. We're going to have some lab nights where I'm going to be showing you some stuff and discussing a few topics or doing some reactions to people doing Roto. We will see how it goes. But today, I'm really excited because we have an amazing guest. We were talking in offline, and already we were talking about so many things that is podcast talk. So we had to stop ourselves from from doing this. And let me introduce you to our guest, Howard Cabalfin. Let's see if I can bring us both in. All right. Shall we start? There's
Let's
so
start.
much. There's so much to talk. Uh, where would you like to start? So you were just talking about your career, what pretty much what you are doing currently, right? I think we have similar um, similar roles, I would say, being heading a department, and we have teams to take care of. There's different situations. There's teams locally, right? There's teams outside on the outsource vendors that we also need to take care. It's an interesting role. It takes a lot of responsibility. There's also training involved. I don't know if you are also involved in training. There's so much to it that for me this is what draws me into what we do. It's the responsibility of taking care of people, taking care of people's careers, taking care of their progression as artists, and ultimately have fun doing shows as well, and have all the buzz of going on shows and trying to help out, push all these monsters out with so many shots.
And every day is a different challenge.
It is every day there's a new
Ne-
problem to solve, right?
yes, never the same challenge twice. So
My goodness, how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing visual effects for about 16 years, um, but I've been supervising for the last 10.
Nice. And what was for you like the biggest highlight? Is there any specific moment where like,
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, there was three. Obviously, my first job, my first professional gig was a huge highlight. The second highlight was when our company received and achieved the Academy Award nomination for visual effects for Curious Case of Benjamin Button. That was my first paint show. I was I had not done paint until that show, and doing paint on Benjamin Buttons and then getting an Academy Award as a collective
wow.
for that show was just you know a just validated my all those years of training and sacrifice. And then the third highlight was professionally was getting a VES nomination for for Iron Man 3.
Oh, nice.
And
Compositing?
what's that?
Was it compositing?
Yes, so it was the first time that Roto was acknowledged
Oh,
in
interesting.
uh, in a compositing award because
Wow. It's not it's
I
not
had
it's not usual, right? They don't you know,
no
whenever they usually submit the names for the VES, Roto is never included.
exactly. It was like I was totally shocked why I would be on the same bill as the compositing supervisors, right?
Wow,
But
nice.
I was really lucky because the compositing supervisors actually acknowledged that we couldn't have done this without the Roto team. So
Wow.
that's why they put my name on the VES nomination. But again, I have to say also like the fact that my predecessor, who was the one who mentored me, she also got the Academy Award for Roto on Benjamin Button. So like I felt like we were keeping like this flame of recognition alive for the Roto team, and
Oh,
it was
nice.
just an amazing feeling to get those nominations. I didn't get the VES because Gravity
Oh yeah.
swept everything that year, but at least we were on the bill,
No,
so
but that
it was
is really
great.
good. And to be honest, like recently, I've witnessed at least at Image Engine, all the VFX supervisors being extremely vocal on how important Roto and Paint, our department has been uh, throughout the recent years. It's rare to see this happening, but the volume of work that we are pushing is monstrous. It's absolutely insane. And it's exactly what you were mentioning is like without Roto and Paint, it would be impossible to push this movie out. It was just not possible. One of the things that I usually tell people when they ask me is like, why do you keep doing this and why do you insist in doing this? Uh, it's just like whenever you're doing a roto shot, you cannot reuse anything, right? It's like imagine that you are doing um, like a CG, a piece of CG. You can use the same model, you can use the same texture, same asset.
Mhm.
You can even use the same lighting setup for the whole sequence, right? But for every single shot of that sequence, the roto and the paint have to be individual. It's done individually. There's no way for you to reuse a piece of roto. Even if the camera is a little bit off, it's the same shot. It's impossible for you to reuse. So it's like there is this thing of having to start everything from scratch, and
Yeah,
how important it is.
let me build on that. Like,
Sure.
and imagine if the client decides to choose another take
Yeah.
and has to re-ingest a new plate. It's in the same shot, it's in the same lighting, it's in the same set. So you can use all the assets again
Pretty much.
and just, reanimate it, but you can't use the same roto.
Yeah.
It's got to start from zero again.
Yeah. Match move also, right? Match move has to do it every single
Oh yeah.
time. They have to do
Yes,
it. They
match move as
cannot
well.
reuse. So it's like,
I feel like tracking and match move are like our 3D cousins.
yeah,
Yeah.
completely, completely, completely. And what is your view on this? That people say that roto and paint and also match move is just a stepping stone into something, because recently what I've been finding is that people that really enjoy doing roto and paint, they want to stay in roto and paint. They don't necessarily need to move into compositing to feel fulfilled. Is usually just a matter of what conditions can the company offer in terms of compensation and yeah, and recognition. So if suddenly we go into a situation where Roto and Paint has the same value as the other department and is not just a stepping stone, uh, suddenly we have career specialists, and I know a few.
Oh, absolutely. So do I. I work with people who have been in roto and paint specifically for more than 10, 20 years, right? So there are like career roto paint people out there. Now, I want to go back to your question.
Uh huh.
What do I think about let's recap that. You were asking me what do we think about the comment that Roto
Yeah,
and Paint is a
a
stepping
stepping
stone.
stone.
I believe that all of the opinions can be valid in
Hmm.
this particular question, in that there are people who can make a career out of it, right? Um, and I would say that from a personal growth perspective, if you love Roto and Paint, yeah, you should be able to make a living off Roto and Paint. Where it gets a little tricky
Yeah, and it gets
is
very
the
interesting.
economics, right? Is
Oh
the
yeah,
economics.
yeah,
And the reason why people may feel like label it as a stepping stone is because um, eventually people want to grow economically. They want a higher salary, and at a certain point, Roto has this perceived value in the salary scale that, oh, Roto and Paint are in this level, and then Comp is in this level,
yeah,
right? And in terms of skill set, I don't believe that hierarchy should exist,
yeah.
because
I agree.
if you're a comper, you should know Roto and Paint, right?
Exactly.
And I would argue that there's a lot of compositors who,
No
if
idea.
you gave them a paint shot, like,
They
hey,
wouldn't be
remove
able
that
to do it.
rig, they some of them might not want to do it,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like, and and not because they prefer not to do it. I think they might be saying they cannot do it,
yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely.
Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of compositors who can do it, and they should be able to do it. But you know, that again, it's just pointing. It's just kind of pointing to the fact that Roto and Paint should be an essential skill, an essential building block to a larger compositing skill set,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Um, and I feel like if you want a long career in Roto and Paint, I think you should go for it. You should do it. But if you were to ask me, I don't think that's possible in North America anymore. I think what might need to happen is you might have to move to
To
India
India.
or China or
uh,
Vietnam to like have a career in Roto Paint.
well, let me tell you that at Image Engine, we are growing some career BG prep artists. So career roto and prep artists, people that
Good, good.
really 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 enjoy
That's great.
doing this for the fun of doing it, for the fun of being in the department, and they don't necessarily, or they've done comp in the past. Some of them did that. They did comp. I did comp for many years, and I've
Mhm.
decided that my passion was in roto and paint. And other artists that I have in my team, that they've done the same thing. They've decided that they prefer this side. And
Yes.
one of the most interesting things is that I do believe that roto and paint should be the foundation for every compositor. There is no
Oh,
comp
absolutely.
without there's no complex script without the simplicity of a copy pre-mold merge over in for
Yes.
our patches, like all the
Yes.
foundation. And this is scary. Sometimes I see comp scripts, uh, even from senior compositors, that they are not optimized. So I don't see
Mhm.
there the core foundations, everything
Mhm.
that I was taught when I was a paint artist to do, like optimizing the scripts, like all of those little details, the
Mhm.
bounding boxes, all
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
those small little details that make the difference. They are starting to be lost because like all these schools are generating compositors. They come out of the school and they are
Mhm.
compositors. They call themselves compositors. They cannot do comp because suddenly they go into a company, they realize they cannot really do comp. There's
Yep.
more to it, but they also cannot do roto and paint. So this is really
Yep.
scary. Have you been having any experience with schools lately? And what is your view on this? Of like where are we going with this objective?
Ooh, I don't deal with a lot of schools because most of the hires that we have
Hmm.
are, I would say they've been in the game about a year or two. I don't. There's been very rare occasions when we would hire somebody with straight out of school. Um, so. I can't really comment on like the demographic of
Hmm.
like graduating students coming out and what their skill sets are, but just even talking about just my experience with compositors in general, it feels like, yeah, it feels like roto and paint is no longer a building block skill. It feels like people are just being thrust into the compositing world, and there's this mindset like, oh, if you need roto or paint done, just kick it back to the
Kick it
roto or
back.
paint team. And I'm like, okay, we can do that, but like, why didn't like this is like a 1 day roto? Why can't why can't this guy do it, right? Or why can't
Exactly.
this girl do it?
Little
So
little little details, right? It's because
yeah,
for me, roto and paint are fundamentally compositing. For me, it's
absolutely.
another compositing task. And we know that the only reason is because of time. There's no time for a
Hmm.
compositor to be doing roto every single day, or else you would need exactly the
Yep.
same time that a roto artist needs to complete that. So I
Yep.
understand the
Yep.
specialization, and that for me
Same here.
is absolutely normal. What for me is not normal is the value, like the fact that suddenly roto and paint are going into India, and we know that the prices are completely different, right?
Hmm.
Suddenly this kind of these departments, including Match Move, became less valuable. And I do believe that we cannot take value from this. It's what these guys do is incredible. The speed that they do these things is incredible. The level of detail, the amount of hours they have to put in to do a shot is insane. So for me, the value and my respect for the department is growing every year and every moment that I get involved. I visited India. I visited several companies in India, outsourced vendors,
Mm.
and saw in live what is happening in there, and all the passion and that people put into it, and came back with a completely different view over this. So yeah, it's an interesting one,
Yeah,
right?
I'm yeah, I'm glad you brought up going to India, because there's before we started heavily outsourcing, like, because I was there on the cusp, right? Like, I had been there in both eras where
Me
we had
too.
a huge internal team where there was rarely any outsource, and then I saw the transition of the economics go global, right? We
Yep.
went from a big local team to big outsourced team, whatever that might look like. It could be an internal team based like our own brand uh, of like just basically having a department somewhere in another country, or it could also be an external vendor, right? So I've seen the gamut, and I've and there was this perception that like um, the Indian artists weren't as good, or they couldn't do as much volume, or their quality wasn't good. And I would
Hmm.
argue that like that was maybe 10, 15 years
Oh
ago,
yeah.
but I think now they're teaching me stuff. Right? Like they're like my counterpart in India. I mean, he's an amazing 2D artist. He can,
Yeah.
and he's got like unreal skills too now. So it's like I would say that just my being open to the fact that this industry that we have is no longer based in North America, but it's a global industry. And this is the reason why I post so much, is because as we get bigger, right? As like you were talking about, as projects and the creatives want more volume of visual effects, right? They want more. Like there
Yeah.
used to be, like, remember in Jurassic Park, it was just like maybe one 1/100th of the movie was visual effects, and then like now it's like every shot is a visual effects shot,
Yeah.
right? So as the companies want more volume and have more appetite, Roto Paint also is part of that uh, appetite, right? We're going to need more Roto and Paint, and we're going to not only just need bodies, we're going to need skilled bodies, right? So as the industry grows, I feel like it's our duty to like educate people to know what is required of them, right? You can't just like again, there's this mindset like, oh, roto's just tracing, right? Sure,
Oh,
you you've
oh,
heard that,
there's,
right?
yeah, yeah. Oh man,
you,
my goodness, I've
you,
heard
you
so much about Roto.
yeah, and it's almost like a demeaning comment,
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's just tracing. What's the big deal, right? But
People have
there's a
no idea
lot
until
of
they actually do it. You know, a lot
yeah,
of people
yeah,
have
people
a completely different idea that Roto is just like, oh yeah, you just put a spline in there and then a million points and then you every frame. People say every
yep,
frame you just change that and everyone can do
yep,
that. And I was like,
yep,
whoa, whoa, whoa. There's so much to
yeah.
it.
Well, you could do it like anybody could do it on that one frame, right?
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
but do it across like a 300 frame shot,
Oh
right?
yeah.
With hair
With
and
hair and
and
moving
moving
cloth.
camera, a cloth, right? Grass,
Grass.
maybe roto a tree with leaves on it too.
Oh
You know,
yeah. Oh yeah.
you know, I could throw all kinds of, exceptions that will blow
Yeah.
the exception of like, oh, roto's just tracing. I could totally blow that. But, the reason why I mentioned that is that there's multiple mindsets of what roto is, right? People think like it's this simple thing, and then people who know roto know that it's a very technically
Yeah.
demanding skill set, right? And then when you add the variations, right? So so we have these spectrum like, oh, roto's tracing on one side, and then you have on the right, roto's a technically demanding skill and request, and then on top of that, every studio has their own way of doing
Oh
the
yeah.
roto, right? Like the deliverable that Image Engine might have is going to be different than what DD has, right? And it's
Completely.
not right or wrong. It's just the way that your pipeline is designed, or the way that your culture, your way your compositors want the roto. They want it in a their way of, they want roto in their way, right?
Oh my
I've talked to my
goodness.
roto
How many
I've talked to
hours do
my
we have to
composite.
discuss this, Howard? How many hours? Because only on this topic we could stay here for hours
Oh, that's
talking
true.
about
That's
this
true.
and talking about,
Yeah.
every year of my career, I've counted that I had to have exactly this discussion with someone at any given company where I've been. There's always a moment to discuss what is the best roto, what is the best deliverable that can be done.
Yep.
And I've been, I don't know, every single year I've had this discussion. So it's like I have this, I don't know, it's an essay of information. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this segment, to talk about this, to expose a little bit about the options that we have, that
Oh,
I'm
for sure.
faced, and
For
kind
sure.
of put it out there and saying, okay, here are pros and cons about each one of them, and how we're going to be able to choose which one we call more efficient. So we have, oh my goodness, only about that topic we would stay here for a whole day discussing that. I
Oh, for
saw
sure.
Donny Choi. I think Johnny Choi is the Roten prep supervisor for Scanline in Korea, and I
Hey,
worked
Johnny
with him
Choi.
back
What's
in
up?
back in
Shout
in,
out
in
to the
Scanline.
Koreans, man.
So he's asking, could you explain those views from artists in India? I'm curious. Some of them are really talented. Uh, exactly like in any other part of the world, there are really amazing, talented artists, and there are artists that are not so talented. Exactly. It's just that in India, the pool is much bigger because there's so many thousands and thousands and thousands of artists. You have a bigger pool to choose from. So basically, when I went there, I've one of the questions that I asked was exactly about this that we were talking. It's like, how do you guys deal as a vendor on all of these types of roto that each one of your clients is asking for? How do you deal with this? Because it's crazy already from inside just one company, having sometimes a compositing supervisor asking for one kind of roto and another one asking for another kind of roto. So imagine from the vendor side, how do they feel like having to deliver all of these things and not even being able to contest or give their opinion and just say, sure, I'll do whatever you want. And pretty much I've realized that they have strong opinions. They have really strong opinions on this, but because of course it's a business and you have to care for your clients, they kind of end up rolling with the game. It's like, okay, you want roto with the right hand, I'll do it with the right hand. You want it with the left hand, I'll do it with the left hand. It's like we will do every single version of roto that you ask. So they end up having this. And for me, one of the most tricky things is to have consistency whenever we are working with the vendor. We expect from show to show to have a good consistency on what we receive. And sometimes that is the problem. Like, I can imagine the artists move from show to show in the vendors, and sometimes they come in formatted to a different company,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I feel that instantly. I go like, oh, what happened here? This is not really the way we do it. So
Yep.
where
Yep.
does this guy come from?
So I have a really strong solution for that, and something that my thankfully all the producers at my studio have really been amazingly, and they've supported me, and um, because we experience that inconsistency amongst vendors, right? So there's, you have vendor A do it the way they prefer doing it. We have vendor B doing it the way they do it. And sometimes if you have vendor A and vendor B on the same show, you're like, well, why is the roto look so different? So the solution that we came up with was what's called a tech spec. And this
Yeah,
was basically this is a concept that it's a very simple concept. It's like, we know there's all these varieties of roto.
yeah,
You can do it all these different ways, but for our company,
we
we
want it
want
this
it
way.
done this way. And here's how you do it, right? It's almost like a bible of how you do our roto.
Absolutely.
And we show you like what's the structure, what's the software, how do you layer, like we got, I think our tech spec is like 70 pages long at the base level, right? Just that just
70
communicates
pages.
70.
70. Wow.
Yes.
How doesn't go that far?
So, and here's the thing though, even with a 70-page document that like we built this over a 10-year span. This was an idea that one of our VFX supervisors had
Yeah.
10 years ago, right? And a producer. I was like, okay, cool, this is a great idea, I'm on board. So it was 5 pages long when it first started out,
Yeah.
right? And then as we progressed over all these different projects, the comp supervisors, well, were saying like, well, the roto needs to be this.
Add
Okay,
add
cool, we
this,
added
add
to the tech
that.
spec. Yes, add this, add that, add this. Now, obviously, after 10 years, with all these requests from the comp supervisors, you're going to end up building a very robust document.
Yeah.
Now, now that we've like, and I've been paid a great compliment by one of our comp supervisors. He goes, I don't want to ever touch our roto pipeline because it's stable, right? He told me that
Wow.
in a recent meeting, and I was like, so
Yeah.
like it really warmed my heart, because it's like he saw the work that we put in, like all the leads and I, because we threw everything in there that the comp supervisors could ever possibly want, right? Even if it was just like a 10% case use, right? And so that's why it's 70 pages. Now that this document and these technical expectations are solid, it's just a matter of getting, now the challenge is
Getting the
not
message
that
out there, right?
we're communicating. It's that, are the vendors like giving us back what was in the document. So this is where we're having the troubles, is that we're clear about our expectations, but the vendors, the good ones, will deliver our expectations on version 1 and version 2, but the ones who aren't so good, the ones who probably didn't even read the tech spec document, are delivering it the way that they think is good for them and not good for us. So this is that's the crux. And this is where you're saying, like you're talking, that you alluded to this, is like, how do you like you're as of from the vendor point of view, how do you deal with this,
How
right?
do you deal with it?
Well, you're absolutely right. The there's a phrase in Hollywood that says, "He who has the gold makes the rules." That's the golden rule, right? So if you're the main house, the main VFX house, and you're outsourcing this, then if there's an implicit like hierarchy that you have to fit your ways to match the person paying your bills, right?
Yeah.
And so it, of course, the first step is the main house articulating their expectations in a very clear
Hmm.
way. And I think we are. Like a 70-page document is as clear as you could possibly get it,
Solid,
right?
right? It's solid. It's very
Right?
clear.
Yeah. Now, are you now on the vendor side, are you reading that document
Yeah.
and are you following the practices that are outlined in it? If you're not, because you're like you don't want to have the trouble to like, you know, QC according to this tech spec and you just want to QC whatever you think is good, then we have an issue because now you have two differences of what is considered complete,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And that kind of goes into one of the things, one of the amazing things that you've been doing, which is collecting all of this data about roto approval. And
Yes.
that was so fun because it created such a buzz, such a controversy, and we were talking about that. I was talking with my team about that as well. So it was like, how do we get to version one approvals? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
so complicated, exactly because you explained. One thing is you lay out the the standards that you choose, and the other one is how do you get from the other side the teams on those vendors to follow those rules and to deliver exactly what you want to the level of precision that you want. So do you
Yes.
want to tell us about these documents that you've been creating and the ATV, the concept of the ATV?
Oh gosh. Well, those are two big questions. Let me go. I already talked a little bit about the tech specs, so
Yeah.
but I'll cover that just in brief. So, like I said, it's basically the document is basically this is how we want our roto delivered, right? In our case, we want nuke scripts, right? Like I know um, silhouette is the weapon of choice for most roto artists, right? And it's extremely robust program. But compositors do not use silhouette. So if you want,
Sure.
if a compositor wants to tweak that roto, how you better hope that they know silhouette. But most compositors, even if they did know silhouette, they don't want to even
They
take
don't
the
want to do
time of
it.
day to wait for silhouette to load, right? They've got like hundreds of comps to do by like 3 o'clock this afternoon, right? So they want to stay in their software, which is predominantly Nuke, right? So right out the gate, our tech spec says you have to deliver your splines in Nuke, and that's the second thing. That's a key thing. So number one, the um, the the script should be in Nuke. The second key thing is we are asking not just for the rendered mats. We want precision in the actual splines themselves. So I don't know how many studios are enforcing the concept of making their deliverable a script as well as a rendered mat.
Hmm.
Some studios are like, oh, we just need the black and white alpha, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, that's fine for you, but that's not fine for us because over the years, what we've learned is if you just give us a mat and then in the 11th hour, the compositor is like, hey, where's the script for that? I want to just do this one frame tweak. And you're like, sorry, compositor, they didn't give us the script, right? So this is why if you backtrack this, if you say in your tech specs, I want a script as well as a mat, well, now you've opened up this whole two-dimensional QC because you're not just QCing for the rendered pixels. You're also diving under the hood of where that
Having the
roto came
splines
from and making
to
sure
be
even
good.
the splines are spot on,
Yeah.
right? And that way, when that roto gets published, every compositor can just say, "Oh, I can edit that now," and it'll just take me an hour to tweak that, right? As opposed to going back through this whole outsource cycle, where, oh, I need to edit this one frame. Sorry, compositor, you got to kick it all the way back to
Let
across the
me
world.
let me
Wait
send
for
you a
it to come
curveball,
back.
Howard. Let me send you a curveball. Are you prepared for this
Yeah,
one?
absolutely. Throw it. I
um,
got my catcher's mitt.
okay. All right. So you probably have seen this constantly. Uh, single frame splines.
Yes,
Single frame
we call
splines,
it
right?
shape swapping.
Sorry, shape swap. Well, yeah, exactly. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. You do,
Oh yeah.
but maybe the audience doesn't understand. So basically, what we call single frame splines or spline swapping is basically a form of let's call it cheating. In certain cases, in the majority of the cases, if you are doing just an edge that you can follow and is always the same, you shouldn't need to get rid of that spline, and you could reuse the same spline throughout the whole frame range, even if if the edge is always there and represents the same object, you can use that same spline throughout the frame range. So what happens is with motion blur, and that is where the controversy comes. What happens is sometimes the artists have difficulty in matching motion blur. So what they do is they create one spline that has two handles, one to the left, one to the right, and that spline is only visible on the current frame. So basically, they turn it off on the left, and they turn it off on the right, and that spline is only visible in the middle because you want only the motion blur to be correct. So you cheat the position of the splines on the handles just to get that center one correctly. This means is that for when an object is moving, for every single frame that this happens, you have a new set of splines. And sometimes to describe one object, you get 50 splines. So you get 50 splines every single frame. So one of the
Oh yeah. Yeah.
issues that we have is first stopping the single frame splines, because this would completely kill the objective of you having splines for the compositors to tweak, because the compositor sees that and he's going to pull his hair and saying, you guys are crazy. I want one
Absolutely.
spline that represents that edge from the beginning until the end. I don't want to mess up with hundreds of single frame splines. How do you deal with this?
Okay. Okay. So again, I love that curveball.
A little curveball.
I got a big catcher's mitt. Well, in this case, it's a curveball. So I guess the metaphor is I'm going to hit that one right out of the
Gonna
park,
hit.
Carlos.
Boom.
I'm going to hit it flush.
Oh,
So here's my solution. In the tech spec, we've already knew that this is a practice going on. So I dedicated 5 pages.
5 pages just so that.
5 pages just dedicated to shape swapping. And that the reason why I don't call it single frame roto splines is because sometimes
It can be
what
more
you're
than
talking
one.
about isn't being done every frame. It's
Yeah.
doing like intersections, like intervals. Like, okay, say you're rotoing me, right? And say this is 100 frame plate. And say it takes, 30 shapes to roto me completely, right? Well, sometimes they'll do it for 10 frames and then they'll swap out another 30 frames from, 11 to 20
Yep.
and then 30 to 40, right? And on, right? So basically the solution to what you're asking about is right out the gate, warn them that we know about this practice. Here's a tech spec that says do not practice this or do not do this practice in our roto. If you do this, we are kicking it back, and that's on you to fix it. And usually, and this is the sucky bit, I know, and this is where it hurts people, is because that practice takes longer to do than just doing it correctly with like a consistent shape, right? So let's say the bid was 5 days to do that roto. Well, now if you have shape swapping in it, you got to kind of throw out the roto again and start over. Like there's no way around you can't reuse shape swapped splines.
Exactly.
So now your bid, now if you spent 5 days on that bid,
You have to
now you got to
restart
add
it.
another 5 days on top of it. So
You
now
have to
you've just blown
restart.
your bid by now you're eating the cost of that 5 days. So this is why at the beginning of every show, I'm presenting you this document. You better read it, because this is why these are the reasons we're going to kick your roto back, right? And so you better get on board. Otherwise, you're going to feel a world of hurt when you're in
Yeah.
production.
Yeah. Well, we've decided to kick back whenever we see shape swap or single frame splines. If there is no reason for that, we just kick it back. We don't even QC it.
Yes.
But
Yes.
there's another
That's a smart
curveball.
practice.
There's another curveball.
Okay.
If they are doing it correctly, let's say if my hand is just moving around here, there's no reason for us to do single frame splines. But if I have a fist and I'm rotating my fist, we are revealing new edges, new detail constantly. And especially when this moves with motion blur, those edges, they have to come with new splines, or else the motion blur, if you keep just an outside edge, it will never match the correct motion blur because of the parallax that happens between this object over here and the other one over here. So they will have definitely a lot.
I would argue that that's not considered shape swapping, because
Exactly.
think about it like a 3D model, right? When an animator creates a digidouble, right, and the body's spinning around, they're not adding another model on top of another model to accomplish this. It's the same arm, no matter if it's here, if it's behind me, if it's in the side. It's the same shape. Why aren't roto artists applying the 3D model,
the same concepts, right,
to roto? It's essentially the same thing. You're taking a spline and you're animating it to a live character. You don't need to swap it with another set of splines, or in this case, throw in another model on top of the first model, right? So that's my answer to your question.
Yeah.
Again, it's a mindset.
Yeah.
Like everybody, again, people are not thinking about roto as a consistent practice, right? They're not thinking about consistency across the entire plate. They're just looking at that one frame, and not thinking of any ramifications across the other frames.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. There's so much to it, like for me, it takes at least 10 weeks to just go through the basics of roto. Not even talking about complex, super complex, because I do believe that every complex thing, can always be divided in very simple tasks. So even to do complex roto, we always go back to the basics. So if you don't know the basics, you cannot do the complex one. Same thing with paint, with prep, patching in nuke, or painting in silhouette. It's the same thing. You cannot do complex stuff if you don't understand the basics, because in the end of the day, the complex is just a combination or a lot of consecutive easy things to do. So that has been one of my challenges recently, is and some of my leads to kind of reteach our vendors on how to identify what is a shape swap, and we don't want to use that, and what is in reality a shape that should be swapped because it's revealing a new piece of detail. Because people might go completely bonkers and saying, no, you have to keep the same spline until the end, or else they will kick it back. And recently we have to go back and say, no, it's fine. On the right moment, on the right justification, it's fine to get rid of one spline and bring another one, because it makes sense and actually will make your roto look correct and look much better. So that has been
see the fact that you're taking the time to explain the nuances of what is considered an okay shape swap versus not an okay shape swap, that is evidence that shows why roto is such a technically demanding skill. Like, so it's not just tracing.
No. I use roto, and this is why usually people get mind blown whenever they are doing some of my training. I use Roto as an excuse to teach people photography. And we go so in detail about what is actually captured in that picture so people can understand whenever they put a spline, they know exactly the outcome. They know exactly
Yep.
what is going to happen because they know
Yep.
how that image was captured and why is that motion blur looking like that. And what can we do on our side to compensate and to make exactly the same shape that we have in there. So it's, for me, Roto is an excuse for taking you as a young student that know nothing about visual effects to someone that is very proficient in image, everything related with image. And I've seen multiple times our artists and our leads and supervisors coming up with actually a lot of technicality about troubleshooting what happened and if the plate was ingested wrong and there's something here that doesn't look correct because of all the technical background that people need to have to be able to do Roto. It's not, I usually say, you can teach a monkey how to do Roto, but you cannot make him a Roto artist. Roto artist is a different level of understanding. For me, is Roto engineering, is understanding what are you doing for you to be efficient, for you to be precise. It's not just throwing splines at it and saying, oh yeah, I just have to do this because I just want to go into comp and, I have to do this. It's like, it's not about that. It's a lot more. It's the technicality of it, the deep understanding of imagery, and everything you have to go through to kind of understand what are the pixels that are represented in there, because everything else is going to be so much easier once you break through that. Right?
Yep. Hey, I wanted to also go back to your second question because I think we talked
Sure.
about shape swapping. So the second question that you had was the whole concept of where did I come up with ATV, right?
Yes. Yes. Let me see if I can show to our
Okay, go for it.
audience.
And then there was also a comment in the thread that popped up recently that I also wanted to address too, because
Is
it
this
kind of
one?
ties in with that.
Okay, let me see. We have this one. Version 1 approval depends upon compositor, how good
Yes, that's
they
the one.
are with integrating the Roto in comp.
Yep, yep.
And then here there's a second comment from the same guy. I think I don't know the name of. I don't know. It
Oh,
doesn't have a name
I
because it's
see. So
YouTube.
it's like
So a good
so.
Roto version will be approved by a Roto soup, but the same version can be kicked back by comp artists.
Yes,
Um,
let's address both of those after we get into the ATV
yeah.
because all of this is kind of connected. It's all about definitions of approval, right?
Okay. Let me see if I can find ATV. Let me share our screen, and
Oh yeah, that's it right there.
that's it, right?
Yes.
So if I open this, and all right. Okay. Tell us about this.
All right. So I'm a huge basketball fan, and realized that after watching basketball and doing roto for so long, there's a lot of similarities. And number one is, well, before I even talk about the similarities, I just wanted to say the reason that I came up with this concept of ATV, which stands for approvals to versions, is that we wanted to measure how well a vendor was doing on the show.
Uh-huh.
The basic question that producers always ask me is, hey, out of all these vendors that you work with, who do you recommend as a good vendor? And in the old days, we would, or I would just say, oh, well, I feel like vendor A is really good because, X, Y, and Z reasons, right? Now, on some days, if I was in a bad mood, if vendor A, let's say vendor A gave me a batch of bad roto that day, right? I might say to that producer, "Oh, vendor A sucks because, I just had recently a bad experience with them."
Hmm.
But, that's not taking into account maybe that like throughout the entire
Yep.
year, they might have been doing really well. It's just for some reason that batch was bad, right? So I thought it was unfair to make a judgment on vendor performance unless you're taking the totality of their performance,
Mhm.
right? And so I thought that I have access to all this data, right? So I use ShotGrid very in really crazy mad scientist types of ways, right? Because some producers taught me how to use ShotGrid back in the day, and I've been using it ever since. And they taught me so many tricks and stuff that I can like look into any show and see the health of a show in like 2 minutes, right? Now, based on that experience, I said, well, why couldn't we create a metric that's like data driven instead of feeling driven? And maybe that will be a more fair metric to judge whether a
Mhm.
vendor is a good vendor or a bad vendor, right? Or a vendor let's rephrase that. There shouldn't be good or bad. It's just be these are vendors we want to continue working with, and these are vendors we may want to just ghost, right? So with ShotGrid, you can and with a good ingestion scheme, like if you're ingesting and publishing all of your
Mhm.
rotos, you're gonna see like eventually you're gonna see a total number of rotos. So over the last year, I think we've done like 9,000 versions of roto, right, from all these different vendors. And now that we have 9,000, what do you call it? 9,000 a 9,000 version data set, right?
Yeah.
You can do the average, right? You can figure out, okay, what is the average ATV? Like, how many of these are being approved and how many of these are being kicked back, right? So what I've learned that it was about on the average of this 9,000, we reached like 53%. So essentially, it takes 2 versions to get 1 approval.
Okay.
All right. So that's a fair number. I
Yeah.
don't see the thing with now this is where I make the comparison with basketball. When you're shooting a basket,
You see all
no
of those
one is
statistics, right?
100%. No one on the planet is 100%.
Yeah.
You will miss eventually,
Yeah.
right? So it's unfair to use 100% for any kind of metric because that's physically impossible, right? So and it's statistically impossible. So a fair assessment is just take the big data set and find out what is the
What is the
average,
average?
right?
And the average is 2 versions.
And
That's why it's the 50%, right? 50%
yeah,
line is the 2
53%,
versions.
right? All right. Now, if that is your benchmark, a vendor should be above that. That's my that's like if you're good, you're just above that line,
So
right?
above that
To
line
me,
is
that's
one
yeah,
version.
yeah, like either 1 or 2, right? You're either at 52. That's why we use percentages
Yeah.
because it's more nuanced, right? You don't. It's not just 1 version, 2 version. And the thing is, to be fair, you should. And this is where I was a little when I did my survey, I was getting people who were like who only saw like 20 versions of Roto, right? And I'm like, can you really vote in this survey because you
Yeah.
don't have enough data to really make a fair assessment of what is the actual metrics. Maybe your 20 was in a really good batch, right? Like maybe the rest were like under like 20%. But because you only saw 20, you didn't see the rest of the bad ones, right? So that's why I'm like relying on huge data sets to kind of give me a number. Now that we know that
The
53 is the
baseline.
benchmark, now I can go into each vendor. Like, so instead of looking at the 9,000, I'll just look at the 1,000 that this vendor did. I can look at the 100 that this vendor did, and I can get the percentages within
Interesting.
those smaller data sets, right? And then now it'll come into a percentage, right? And now, if your percentage, you know, is like say out of that 1,000, you did, say you did 630 were approved, and the others were kickback. Well, now you're at 63%. So that means you're above that line, and actually you're high above that line. So that means that you're an amazing vendor, right? Now, if you're in the 50% group, right, you're okay.
You're
We'll keep
okay-ish.
working with you, right? But if you go
with two
below that,
versions.
like say you're under 40 or under 30, that means you're like 3 versions, 4 versions, right? On the average, right? This this is a this could be considered a problem.
Hmm.
So I thought that using this metric, and because like some shots are hard, some shots are easy too, right? Like you
But then
we
it
want
all
kind
depends
of
on
like average.
who is approving those shots, right? Because
Well,
it's
that's true.
humans. It
That's true.
depends. It depends on the person behind the will on clicking the button to choose if it's approved or not. Well,
That's true. Now,
we
here's
have we have. Let me just tell you our
okay.
my statistic. I've never looked into with such detail into like big sets. Um,
Yes.
of data, but I'm actually very curious to see. But usually, this is from our day to day. Our average is 3 to 4 versions. You know,
Okay.
and this is all depends on the state of the show that we are. If we are right in the beginning, we want to set a good standard. We want to help the vendors to understand what is that we are aiming for. We try to insist and say, okay, one more version. We're going to give you some more notes. It's not still not perfect here. We try to encourage them, to show them, to teach where are we aiming at. I would
Mhm.
say halfway through the show or towards the end of the show, our standards cannot be as high. So it's all
Yes.
depending
Yes.
on whoever is on the wheel and
Yes.
looking into those shots to choose if depending on the shot and also depending on what is the objective. Is the objective just to put some smoke behind the character or actually
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
replace the background completely? So there is all of this knowledge from what is the visual effects specification that we want to the strategy that we want to do to choose if enough is enough or if we should insist being
Yes.
that the baseline our minimal has to be already at a really high
Yeah.
standard. So
Well, here, I have a response to that. This is why I like big data sets
yeah,
because I know there's always going to be somebody that says, and you're just bringing it up and you're being the spokesperson for all these people. Somebody's always going to say, it depends.
yeah,
It depends on the QCer. It depends
yeah,
on the shot. It depends on the length. It depends on the complexity. Yes, I know this, right? So I'm trying to say that I cannot factor, there's no way to factor all of that into this metric. So the only way to override that is just to
just
look at a
average.
big data set and look at the average,
Just
right?
blur it out, right? You have to
Just
blur it
blur it out.
out,
Like put a
close your
Vaseline
eyes,
on your lens, put
put,
some camera shake.
put some camera shake, and then you're going like, okay, if I was looking like this, how does it look the
Yeah,
panorama?
exactly. Like exactly. And so to me that's a little bit more fair, right? In that you're just allowing, you're kind of just glossing over the nuances and just going for just general broad strokes.
Absolutely. So, do you want to tell
And
us
here's the
about some
here
of?
okay, go for it.
No, no. I was just saying if you want to show us like some of these screens that you've created to get this. This is pretty much the explanation that you've been giving now, right? Like explaining
Yeah,
what is
this
that 50% baseline, right?
yeah, exactly. This image, and as you wait, can you go back to
Sure. This one.
the image? So yeah, exactly what you just said, Carlos, is that as you know, I'm trying to communicate a really complex topic,
Yeah.
and I think the only way to do this is visually, right? So making a parallel with roto and basketball to me is like the most fairest way to explore, or the cleanest way to do this, in that there the approval is a very simple concept, right? You're just trying to get it past the person, the gatekeeper, right? And in basketball, you're just trying to get the ball in the hole, right? So both cases are very clear signs of accomplishment, right? And that's why all of this depend stuff is, yes, I'm acknowledging all of the depend stuff, but at the end of the day, somebody has to say it's done, right?
Yeah.
Because
Somebody has
we
to say
don't
it's
have
approved,
infinite
right?
time. like there's a release date on our movie.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we don't have infinite time to say, oh, well, it depends, right? Somebody has to make the call that this is what we say goes, right? Even if it's not the greatest ever, it at least meets a minimum, it at least met a minimum standard, right? I'll accept that as well, right? So this is why if you track this in ShotGrid or whatever project management
Yeah.
software you have in your studio, then you can use the just simple like graphing software in the program itself to spit out a percentage, right? And ShotGrid, I've created all my ShotGrid pages, so I have dashboards that at any given moment I could say, how's this vendor doing? And then I could point the link right to the producer who wants to hire the vendor on the next project. I say, hey, this is how the vendor's doing, like, and I've taken my own opinion out of the like I've taken my whole opinion out of the math, right?
Yeah.
The producer can make or they can make an own judgment on their own.
Yeah. Makes sense. Donnie.
Now there was a
Yeah.
comment. Now this goes back to one of the person's comments. Somebody was saying like the approval depends on the compositor, right? And yes, I agree that it depends on the compositor. However, I would
I
like to also throw in that
yeah.
every compositor is kind of different, right?
Yeah,
Like
I
some,
disagree on this comment. I
yeah,
disagree on this comment from Donnie.
there you go. So at a certain point, as you and I, as supervisors, we cannot like have a QC criteria
Yeah.
based on individual
Different
compositors, right?
flavors, right? We
Yeah,
gotta have different
like
flavors.
so we as a whole, like the way and this goes back to what you were saying, it depends on who's QCing, right? What we've learned at in my studio is that we all talk to each other as leads and we say, okay, over the years, these are the criteria, and we've set like 30 criteria, and it's like a checklist. Did they do this? Yes. Did they do this? Yes. And we have a tool that actually says it's like it has the questions. Like it's like if you take your car to the
Look at Donnie's
to the
comment. I'm waiting for
to the
AI
to the
QC tool.
mechanic. Yeah, there's like a 30-point checklist, right? We have that, and we're just like, okay, did they do? Is this good? Yes, 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 yes. And then the only time it's bad is when you say no, and then you're like, okay, why is that a no? Right? Like what? Let's dig in. Let's do a diagnosis of what that one tech spec is. Why is it wrong? And so what by doing that, we've standardized the QC across multiple leads, right? So the leads are always going to QC in relatively the same, looking
Exactly.
at this relatively the same amount of things. Now every lead will have their own flavor. Some might
Yeah.
look like go really deep into it and like zoom in 400% and go frame by frame on every spline, and they'll get that detailed. And that's okay. Um, because we need those people as well. So, but on the whole, I would say that number one, we've standardized it as a group, as a collective,
Yeah.
right? We said we are as a unit, as a team, we're going to QC based on these standards, right? And then and then there'll be like a 10% variation,
Yeah.
but there won't be like huge 100% variations, right?
And you've also
And the
standardized
second
with
thing,
comp, right? You've like the discussion, because comp, exactly
yes,
what Donnie was saying. The compers are consuming our rotos, so they need to
yes,
be
yes,
served well. And of course, this
absolutely,
discussion comes in with the head of comp, and
yes.
explaining, like, and discussing what is the best deliverable that we can have that
Yes.
helps the comper to finish the shot faster.
Yes.
In the end of the day, is
So
all about
this
this, right?
so this set of this criteria that we've developed over the years, it took years, literally years of conversations with the leads of Roto, with the comp supervisors and the comp leads, all the senior staff. And we constantly debated like what is the spec that we expect from comp. And some things I didn't it was really hard to implement, like motion blur, for example. DE
Oh,
was not a big motion blur house. We were like hard edge only, right?
oh my goodness.
But but then we learned how to add motion blur without adding more manual labor. Like we can still do a one level spline hard edge but then now because we discovered how to do it procedurally, we have now multiple layers that give you 2 layers of motion blur in addition to your hard edge. So like now comp can just like choose which motion blur that they want
Wow.
and just add it,
How
right?
many
So
hours do you
and
have? Again, how many hours? How many hours? Let's look at the clock. Again, motion blur is another such a big topic that
yes,
again
yes.
we need to dig so deep into that, because again that is one of the conversations every single year I need to have. It's exactly that one. So we
You know
can
what? We had motion blur arguments for like the first 5 years of my tenure as supervisor, but then once we figured out that procedural method, and the reason why I was arguing, it's not because I didn't want to do motion blur. It was because I knew that it was going to add double the bid to our artists, and I did
oh,
not, and I knew that producers were not going to accept double the amount to
I would
add motion on
disagree.
motion blur.
How
Huh?
many curved balls do you want now? This is so interesting, because we've been through the same wars, and I do
Yes.
believe that we still have different visions on this, and this is
Okay.
something
Yeah.
that I've been. I
I agree.
think only for this we're gonna need a session just dedicated to the technical side. This is why I want to do the lab nights. I want to be
Yes.
geeking out and explaining the
Yeah.
several options
Yeah.
that we are talking right now. I do believe there is so much to extract out of this conversation that we could take
Yes.
years to talk about this.
Well, the thing about motion blur is that I'm not saying that the solution that we came up with is a universal one. I'm just saying that through the years of many discussions with our like we're
Uh-huh.
close, like Roto and Paint and Comp are tight. We're
Same
like
thing. Same thing.
we're a team. We are bonded together, and we learned to listen to them, and we got what they wanted, but we also had to protect, in my opinion, we wanted to protect the concept of a core central edge, right? Motion blur can flare like crazy, right? Based on the photography. So there's a rule in Roto that says maintain your shape, the consistency of your shape. So for example, if I have this cup, we
Uh-huh.
know that this is a cylinder, right?
Yeah.
But when I move it like crazy and if the camera moves, now the shape of the cup
Gets
is
smaller.
could be thin, it
Yeah.
could be wide,
So how do you do
like
hard edge roto with that?
well,
You have to
it's
do.
called
You have
interpolation. So like you basically know that this is a rigid object, right? So there's no roto that should be compressed.
exactly.
So you basically allow, like
So we
if
agree on
I'm going
this.
like this, if I'm going like this across the screen,
Yeah.
and like right here, there's like maybe at the head of the frame there's a solid frame, and then at near the over at the end there's a hard frame. So
Absolutely.
you just allow it to interpolate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't squeeze the shape in the
Absolutely.
middle.
So you
You
don't
just
you don't
let it
do hard edge
ride.
roto. You do motion blur roto, right?
Well, it's still hard edge because that cup is still the same
Oh,
width.
you mean hard
Vision.
object in this case, right? It
Yes,
doesn't match
yes.
the hard edge of the motion blur. The hard edge and the soft edge,
No,
it goes in the middle.
no. It's not technically in the middle. It's just an interpolation because what happens is our procedural method will calculate the distance that the spline has traveled, right? And that will create the motion blur. Now, here's the second part that makes this work is that we know that no, like roto artists should not be expected to get motion blurred accuracy because they don't know what the background is going to be,
The
right?
background.
Yes, because what if you had a sky that was bright and then you
Uh-huh.
wanted to roto it against and then and in the comp it was a night sky,
Yeah.
right? So even if you were pixel perfect on the daylight plate,
The
your roto would
pre-malt.
still look wrong on the nighttime plate or
I
a
would I
darker
would
or even
say
a color correct plate.
I would say the roto looks correct. The roto for me, roto is a black and white. It's just a matte. It's just an alpha, right? What you do with a roto is that defines how the comp will look. So in my opinion, like if your roto matches perfectly the motion blur, hard edge and soft edge, like if it matches one to one the transparency on the motion blur, then what you can do is you can gamma down your roto, and then you can use extrude edges, and then you pre-mold it back again. So basically you get rid of everything that is on the background, and then you can use that roto everywhere. So there's a multitude of
compositors. To me, integration to the background is a compositor's role.
exactly.
Not a roto artist.
So what do we provide is perfect roto to the motion blur. So whatever, and then of course we expect the compositors to know what to do with that. And you know what has been the most interesting thing? The biggest discussions, and curiously, maybe Image Engine was the first company that I didn't have to have this discussion. In all the other companies, and I've been to a lot, all of them, we had amazing discussions with the compositors, because I've realized that sometimes people don't know what to do with the roto. You know, that was the most interesting thing, is like I was explaining to people, I was like, look, roto is this, you know, if I'm providing you the perfect roto, it should match one to one with the plate, with the photography. Now, what you do with it, it can differ completely. You should not expect a pre-molted, you pre-mold the plate with your roto, and you say, oh, what about the background now? I was like, well, that's not how you integrate. That's not how you use the roto. You need to learn how to use this. You need to learn how to use what I call the hard edge version of your roto. It's not the non-motion blur version. Motion blur is one thing. Motion blur turned off is one thing, and hard edge version is another thing. So I usually try to explain to people is like, what you pick up your motion blurred version, you gamma down. So basically you get rid of all transparent pixels, and then you have your hard edge. So your hard edge gets rid of all the background instantly. And this version you can achieve in 2 seconds. So you don't even need to be worried, because you know there's a lot of companies that just provide hard edge. They don't even touch motion blur. It's like a
used to be that way.
Yeah. So that's like a zone where people don't even want to go. But usually what I say is like, well, if you don't provide the motion blur, how you expect your compositor to integrate this and then still have that nice motion blur that expands and contracts? It's impossible. So what happens is usually kick it back into BG Prep to paint edges. That for me is, poof, it's called paint on comp. It's mind-blowing for me. I
hate paint on comp.
It's just mind-blowing, you know. I was mind-blown with this concept, and I've been mind-blown since that day. So what I've been usually trying to explain is to agree with the compositors and comp soups on how to use roto. And it was very interesting to see that even sometimes the most senior people, maybe because they got so used to do it one way, they don't see the options, you know. And when sometimes you present them with another option, they go like, oh, actually that would work better. It was like, see, so we actually agree. And I do believe that we can always agree on all of these things. You know, you were just telling me about the spline consistency of the objects, the object integrity of those splines. And that for me is mandatory in roto, because that's the rules of animation, you know, like we don't squeeze objects constantly and grow, because that will take, for the production, they will take longer to actually create that roto and produce that roto. So it's, again, how many hours do we have, Howard, to discuss these things?
Well, I think one of the audience members said we should do another session.
Oh yeah, it was like in my entire experience, this is the first time I have seen a panel discussing roto over comp in 3D. This is best. So
hopefully
interesting.
This won't be the last.
So yeah, hopefully it's not the last, because we have so many. We have some hot topics here, right?
Oh, for sure.
Shall we go into some of the hot topics? It's like we already have like what, 1 hour and 15 minutes. There is one topic that I wanted to approach. I don't know if it's the right time, but
I'm bracing myself.
It's the AI.
What's that?
The AI for me, it was one of the
Oh yeah.
reasons that made me start this segment. You know, because for the last 3 years, I've been confronted. I've been messaged by friends, everyone, sending me links to the prophet, like someone that says Roto is dead. We're gonna end Roto right now. Like it's about to end. And I usually look at that and my first reaction is to laugh, you know? And people say like, oh, don't be old. You need to adapt to the new technologies. And it's not about that. I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. I work on efficiency every single day of my life.
Hmm.
But one of the most interesting things is that I see on this AI trend is that I've never been asked, as one of the specialists about Roto, I've never been asked by any of the organizations creating tools
Hmm.
for creating AI Roto. I've never been asked, what do I think about it? How do I think when I'm doing the Roto? It's all about we will figure out. We got this. We got this. And the problem is the metrics are wrong. The assumptions are wrong. And whenever I see a result, and I'm pretty sure that you've played with some of these tools. I've played with some of those tools as well. I laugh at that because that is not a deliverable. That cannot be approved. Not version 1, 2, 3, 20, 50. It will never get approved. So what
Yes.
is your
Yes.
view, Howard, on what is the current? Let's talk about first what has been done until now, and then we will talk about what can we do in the future to actually embrace this AI and make it work towards what we need and not what is currently being said. Like all these premonitions of Roto being dead. So, what do you believe that has been done until now, and how can that help us on the moment?
Okay. So your question is what has been done till now and
Yeah.
what do I think about it? Before we talk about what has been done,
Hmm.
what I'd like to talk about is the thing you said, what is a deliverable?
Exactly. Exactly.
So before we like I'm a big believer that humans create the product, not technology, right? Like I can look at Nuke all day long, it's not going to produce a roto for me
Exactly.
until I actually use it. Or I can use Silhouette all day long. I can look at Silhouette all day long, it's not going to produce a
Yeah.
roto.
Yeah.
So the thing that we need to ask ourselves is what do we consider the deliverable? So I think before we talk about AI Roto, there's three things that I think are key deliverables. Number one is I want a spline or in addition to my mat, right?
So you just killed the topic, Howard. You just killed the topic. Until
So
now, we
right
haven't
there,
been
that's
done
a
any
mic drop, right?
splines. You just mic dropped.
Yeah. So and because in the end, our consumers, right? Our clients, which is comp, they want editability, right? A rendered mat, and the reason why my tech spec has specifically said when you deliver this roto, I don't want just the mat, I want the spline that goes with it,
Uh-huh.
right? AI does not yet produce a spline.
Yeah.
No iteration of the tool has produced a spline. Now I know that someone is working on a not on a roto spline, but there's actually people working on AI to drive a 3D model. So if they can drive a 3D model, which is just a three-dimensional spline, then a 2D model is not that far away, in my opinion. But we're not there yet. Now, the second thing is temporal consistency.
Well, before
So,
before you go there, let me
okay,
just let me
okay,
just add something.
okay, go for it.
Even if you don't need the splines for comp, if you would still need the splines to fix your roto. Whenever we give notes
That's true.
back, you know, like on those version 1s, version 2s, version 3s, and 4s. All of this is notes to be fixed with splines. You know, we're not asking the vendors to paint on that roto. We are asking them, can you please move your splines around to make this look like what we want? So even if comp is not involved, even if we are still just on the moment where we are QCing the mat on the most simple form of it, we still need those original the source code, you know, the source code of how to generate that mat to be able to refine. This is where until now I've been facing the most difficult thing is to understand is like, if an image gets generated, that image cannot be refined, or you're going to go like, okay, zoom in here and refine this. But if you haven't been able with the model that you have to refine currently like the image in one go, you shouldn't be able to say, select around here and now you make this piece really good, because you need the whole thing to be good all the time, you know? So you either have a model that actually can make something look perfect, or that image, the image that gets generated cannot be edited. It would have to be painted frame by frame. This for me stops right there and say, you know what? I can't really use this. And until now, it's been that case is that that roto that is being generated, the imagery that's being generated, I don't call it even roto. I call it the mats or the imagery that is being generated.
It's a mat.
It only serves for garbage roto, for showing any CG work, an animation work to the client on a very early stage. You know, it's only that. But even that has a problem. But we'll go there. Let's go to your second point.
Okay, so just to recap, you can use spline and editability as the first deliverable need, right? Like, I'm saying spline, but it's essentially we want roto to be editable. We want the result to be editable.
Exactly.
Right. A mat is not editable unless you paint on it, and that's really not an ideal solution to fixing a mat. All right. So the second thing is temporal consistency. So what I mean by that, and this is the thing that roto artists know really well, but for some reason a computer cannot.
Yes.
Right? Say you're rotoing me. Say the AI is rotoing this plate of just me talking in front of the screen, in front of this background. So like, say there's 100 frames, right? So for some reason, like AI is really good at, drawing me and getting my silhouette, but there'll be like 1 or 2 frames in that 100 frame roto that just either the whole mat would disappear or a part of the mat would disappear. And that to me is not temporally consistent.
Yeah.
So we need AI people to solve that particular issue, because even without the spline, right? Say you're submitting this as a slap comp, or a garbage mat. The client is still going to say, well, why did the CG, like say if there's CG behind me, why did the CG, instead of being occluded by the foreground character, suddenly pop into the foreground?
Pops into it, like, whoa.
Like, so, that's no bueno, right?
Yeah.
Like, so to me, the AI needs to not only produce them, because I think it's producing a mat frame by frame, right? It's not thinking about it again as a whole.
Yeah.
What I think it needs to do is the AI needs to go back through the result as a second pass and say, oh, we calculated this mat and there's a missing frame here. Let's fill that in with like have the AI understand that there's a missing piece.
Interpolate it, right? Interpolate it properly.
And then interpolate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if they can do that, now you have a credible slap comp map, right? So that to me is okay. That's the second condition in order for me to meet a minimum requirement.
You're killing it again.
Sorry. Die.
What is the third one? Maybe the third one can still be salvageable.
Okay, so this is the tricky bit. No AI yet. Okay, If you think about
let me guess. Separation is what you want to talk about?
yes, well,
We're
so so let's talk about what the result AI is really good at separating two planes of dimension, right? So if you look
objects,
at me,
different objects.
I'm a foreground target against a dark background, right? So that's great. If you're comping and you want to replace the background, that that AI could do the job, right? Now, what if you wanted to make my skin blue?
Yeah,
Or what if you wanted to make my eyes purple
yeah,
or red, like my pupils,
yeah.
right? There is
Or
no,
if there's someone behind you that is also a human, because right now it cannot be separated
oh, yes, that's a good
by
one.
the different object. It identifies humans and groups them, so it cannot
Yes,
still
that's right.
identify
That's right.
individual humans and separate individual humans. It's
Yes.
separate people from cars and from whatever. Like at least the models that I've seen until now, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people working on a way of separating different people. I'm pretty sure there's going to be models and a lot of people saying, "Oh, but we're already working on that." Sure, sure. Like, but still, that is why that is the third issue, and not the first and the second, because the first and the second are the
Yeah.
most important ones, which is the quality of the roto. Then now we're talking about the capability of actually separating and making it useful. Because until now, if
Yes.
someone is behind you on the background and you want to put something in between, like a piece of smoke or something, a piece of
Yeah.
CG,
Yeah.
you cannot.
Yep.
So suddenly,
Yep.
the idea of using AI roto for slap comps, just not possible. It's also not possible.
Yes.
I would like
Yes.
to see the case. Maybe you guys are using a lot of this already or not, but I haven't seen a single shot until now where the AI roto can do a garbage mat, a good garbage mat that can be used to present to the client. I haven't seen until now.
Yes.
And for me, to
Well,
be honest,
you could get there, but then you still gotta really like go in and tweak it a lot more, and the tweaks end up becoming just as long
exactly.
as just doing it. So like the return on investment is questionable right now.
Yeah.
Now, I'm glad that you brought up the separation thing because these case use cases that we talk about, what if there's a bunch of people behind me, or what if I wanted to turn my skin blue? Some people in our audience might say, well, you're
You
just
can just key
poking,
it.
you're just throwing scenarios out there that might happen, right? And
No,
I'm
this
like,
is
no,
every
these
single
are
day.
actual requests.
It's
We've actually
requests
heard requests like this
every single
from
day.
our supervisors saying, hey, I need a mat to turn that person's skin blue, or I need to do an eye effect, right? I want the pupils to glow,
Constantly, right?
I want the sclera to glow, or I want the eyebrows to be different colors. Like the level of um, articulate roto that our supervisors want has drastically, in my opinion, the we're almost like creating AOVs of real life.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like
Completely. Completely.
Roto is like literally creating CG passes
Yeah.
for real life
Yeah. Yeah.
characters.
And then you have the core hair, and then you have the wispy bits of hair separated in another
Yep, yep,
channel.
yep,
And
yep, yep.
I'm asking, it's like, how can you create all of that separation if you are just producing a mat, just an image? It's gonna be
Exactly.
very complicated. And until now, I haven't seen a single use case on the internet on any of these organizations that can all the things that I see is like it's like a green screen, and I can generate that with a key. With if there's a green
Yeah,
screen, I
yeah.
can key it.
Or
Uh,
here's the killer one, Carlos. Is it's every shot is lock off.
yeah, exactly, and also locked offs.
I want to see a dolly, like I want a handheld camera example, right? Like
It's too
roto
soon.
something with a
Yeah,
dolly
it's too soon.
or a
There's what I
handheld.
what I
Yeah.
what I feel, and each time I talk about this, I see a lot of friends saying it's like, "Oh yeah, you're just worried to lose your job," and I'm like, "No, I am not worried because I know what it takes to get a roto approved, and maybe these friends they don't know what it takes to get a roto approved. They've never seen our QC standards. They never seen the process of what needs to be done, the level of precision, the pixel
Yep.
perfection that we are looking for,
Yep.
and the complexity of what is involved in here. And what I do believe is that people are getting a bit drunk on all of these AI thing. You know, it started with Mid Journey and all of these images. Now everyone is turning against AI, and this is so interesting because I was the first one to kind of not being hyped with this and saying, "Ooh, this sounds a bit fishy," you know. And what is happening right now, as you've seen on ArtStation, is like everyone is saying, "Look, what is AI if we don't provide our images? You know, what can AI actually do if we don't provide a model?" And
Yep.
this is where the copyright for me becomes such a difficult thing to touch, because right now, if suddenly you provide a model and saying, for Roto, for instance, how are you going to train Roto, Howard, if you are doing, let's say you are doing a Disney show, you know, and suddenly you are doing a DC show, and you're saying, okay, on the DC show, I'm going to use all the images that I've done on the Disney show to train the model to do the Roto. And then Disney says, no, 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 no.
Yep.
You cannot use any of these images. This is still not happening, but it's going to be very soon that I can imagine all of these things being written and saying, you're not allowed to use any of the previous imagery to train any AI models. And then what happens? Well, you're going to have to train the AI with itself. You're going to have to start rotoing on the show, and halfway through the show, you can start reusing those models and start training itself. So for me, I saw the other day Sam Hodge talking about this. It's like he sees this on a different way. Like he sees us having to generate synthetic data sets that we say, what is an edge, what is hair detail, and how do we deal with these things. You generate synthetic data to train the models, and not necessarily with real world cases.
Got it.
For
Okay.
me, I do believe that nothing, and we were talking, like, let's say I've bet with people. I've bet with people at 3 years, at 5 years, and in 10 years. And I've said that in 10 years, we're gonna still be doing Roto, and even more Roto that we've ever seen. We're gonna still be doing Roto because I do believe that AI is capable of generating code. You know, if you want to do Nuke scripts, everything is text-based. It's nodes. You can draw that. You can code that. You know, it's text. Houdini, it's nodes. Sure, effects. You can generate effects based on code. What about Roto? Can you generate those splines and move those splines with just code? It's not really, right? Can't really do it. How do you deal with this?
Yeah. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on these people who are testing driving 3D models with AI, because that, I think, is the source of where the spline solution will come from. Because there's a group of UK guys who were shooting like iPhone video, and they were using an iPhone to do motion capture of some guy just
Uh-huh.
dancing, right? And granted, a motion capture isn't capturing a pixel perfect edge, right? Like it's just grabbing the motion of
Yeah.
the joints and everything. So you could probably get a garbage matte from that. That'll be the first iteration.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe you can couple that with a pixel-based solution that will also not only drives any kind of spline as a rig, but you can also say, okay, let's also add an edge in addition to the rig, right? That'll be the second iteration. And I think as it iterates, then maybe we can get to this future where there is a spline. But like you were saying, it's going to take a long time to get there.
And for me, the only way that I see this working is inside a Roto software where we give, let's say, the key the keyframes, the key moments, key poses of our character. We break down all the splines the way we usually do, but we only do our key poses as the roto should be done. And then the AI will drive the interpolation of that and capture the edge and still allow us to edit the splines. So it's not generating image mattes, it's not generating mattes, but it's actually driving the interpolation of the frames and still keeping the editability, the scalability of that solution. That for me is the only way. But no one ever asked me about this. No one ever asked me about this. People only say, oh, this is the end of Roto. And I'm saying, well, with the current approach, no. with the current approach, this might be the end of a lot of things, which I also don't agree that is gonna be the end of the other departments, especially because of the copyright reasons. Exactly. But definitely Roto is not the easiest, you know. It was felt like it's a low-hanging fruit and saying, okay, what is the easiest department in visual effects? Roto. Okay, let's apply AI to this because it looks very simple, right? You get a picture and you just get an alpha, you just get a matte. Oh, that's very easy. And it turns out that in what, five years, I'm still seeing the exact same images, Howard. The exact same. It's not that you know how technology moves fast, right? Like 5 years ago, I was seeing exactly the same problems that I'm seeing right now. I look at that and I'm saying useless. It's still not there. You know, I cannot use this. I cannot use this in any situation that is actually being used on a production environment. And if you add to this the copyright issues, then where's your model? How can you train your model if you don't have all that data, right? How can you look at your ATVs if you don't have shotgun? You know, you're gonna be thinking
I'm just
about
guessing. Yeah,
you're just guessing.
I'm just guessing.
Jai was saying Roto request is almost comp soup doing a specific cryptomat. Exactly. So whenever we do our bids, we are with the comp supervisors, and the comp supervisor is saying, okay, I need hair detail. I need this arm separated because we're gonna do whatever, or the CG on this arm. Then we're gonna have to paint that arm. So it's literally like you are giving that separation for us to Roto. If we don't Roto, there's not going to be any separation. Right? Yep. How do we solve this? It's still not there. It's still not there. But
Agreed.
But for me, it's like the premonition is so easy. I think for me, it's almost like a clickbait. You know, it's like it's a clickbait. It's very cheap, and I get offended, not because I'm going to lose my job. I'm not going to lose my job because of that. But because it's so cheap, you know, it's cheap to just say, like, oh yeah, you're gonna lose your job because we can do this. And you look at that, well, you don't really understand what I do then.
Exactly. Well, it goes back to that mindset that there's two groups of people who know Roto, who have done Roto or have respect Roto. And then there's the other group of people that says, oh, Roto's just tracing, right? It's just like, how hard is that, right? And it's very demeaning because it's oversimplifying the technical skill and technical demands of what we do. So we're always it seems like we're always going to be combating the two mindsets are always going to be there. So I'll just try to accept that there's going to always be those people, and we'll try to do our best to educate them as to what, you know, the complexity of what we do and the demands.
And adapt to the technology, because I'm so into new tools. You know, I helped the guys from Flowbox, this Polish company.
I thought Flowbox was so promising.
Oh, and it was like they've listened. So, you know, they asked me, what can we do that would be different, that would be literally help you perform in a completely different way. And I started telling them, I started dreaming. You know, I started telling them, like, okay, so I would like a system where I could look at multiple frames, and I could just have them switching to see if my edge is consistent. And they were like, sure. let's start working on something different that is not just what you see is what you get. It's like give give the artists the possibility of performing faster by looking at how they do it. That's what they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
trying to do. But again, it's
Well,
difficult. And
I thought the Flowbox guys, their approach to their product and their software was the right approach. It's just they didn't have the sustainability.
yeah, it was
And I
difficult.
thought that if they would have been able to stay in the game another 5 years, they might have been able to crack the code and they would have had an amazing product. And maybe even if they could have coupled with the Foundry even and built that product
Yeah,
into
yeah,
like their main hook for me was that optical flow driven spline, right? Like if I'm moving my arm and you just draw one keyframe and the keyframe just follows, like the spline just follows the arm because it's driven by like tracking data and doing it in real time. I thought that was already in a really inventive way to approach roto, right?
it was
And you
interesting.
still have the spline at the end of the day.
It was very interesting. Yeah, it would
Yeah.
change a bit of the game in terms of software. Software was another topic that you wanted to approach, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting one. Um, I think over the years, I've been through different experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, one of the best experiences was at Double Negative. They have their own software, internal software, that is fabulous. It's absolutely fantastic. Very simple. It's the most simple one that you can imagine, and it's absolutely fantastic. Um,
Hmm.
and outside, for me, Silhouette is the king. I try to help the Foundry. I had a chat with project managers and everyone, product managers, to try to figure out why people are not using Nuke to Roto, and I explained to them. I did a piece of Roto and saying I can't use this. Like all the tools that I need. Forget about speed. The how heavy Nuke is with
Mm-hmm.
splines, and if you move splines, they create keyframes. Or if you just put 20 splines in Nuke, it's just suddenly wrong. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but forget about that. Just the tools, corner pin tools. Corner pin destroys the whole thing. I told them, it's like, why don't you create a different corner pin that doesn't destroy the other corners? And they were like, yeah, well, it's not really in our realms right now. I was like, I understand.
Yeah.
So for me, this is I don't know how is your opinion, but for me, this is very simple. Nuke is meant to do comp, and there's no other software that can compete with that. Nuke
Yes.
can do Roto, and when I'm teaching Roto, I'm completely software agnostic. Like everything that I teach and I train, you can use in any software. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
look at the software that we are using. You need to understand the theory behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever we are trying to do it, well, for me, it's very easy. I have a software that I can do it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times faster. And I have the other one that is a generic software for compositing that I can do some garbage roto and do like little tweaks. Which one do I use? Well, I use the one that is specifically made to do roto and has all the shortcut keys and all the speed, the efficiency in being able to just look at the image and then quickly change things. That's very easy for me to choose. What do you think about it?
I think it's valid. Like you want to use the best tool for the job, right? And Silhouette is the industry leader for roto.
Yeah,
Now, the counterpoint to that is roto the job that you're going to stay in, right? Because eventually, if you want to become a compositor,
uh huh,
right, and you want to see how compositing works, you need to be exposed and get the
sure,
hours in Nuke. And if you can double your effort, like I know Nuke is a lesser tool for Roto. However, I've been
much
using Nuke
lesser.
yeah, much lesser. I've been using Nuke for Roto since like version 4. So, and that's mostly my tool of choice because I can Roto pretty fast in Nuke.
Wow.
So, now, obviously the planar tracker is not great, so I jumped to Mocha. but once I get my planar trackers right and I get to and import it into Nuke, then everything moves much faster after that.
How do you
But
deal with
like I
a
said,
thousand splines? How do you deal with a thousand
well,
splines? It's
well,
impossible to
there's
digest.
spline management.
It's
Like that's a
impossible.
deep dive into spline management. That should be another episode.
We
But
need another episode. Again, we need an episode for each one of the very controversial topics that we are approaching.
exactly, exactly. This is just like the intro level, right?
This is the intro. We're just doing a trailer, right?
Yeah. Oh wow, this is a long trailer.
It's a long trailer, but we're just scratching the surface, right? We're talking about
That's
software, and
true.
we could stay one episode talking about the experience of working with software, right?
Yeah. So again, it depends on what you want. If you're gonna stay roto paint, then silhouette, stay silhouette all the way, right? But if you want to get into comp, if you want to consider yourself a pianist, then you need to buy a piano,
Yeah,
right? You can't say you're playing the trumpet will naturally give you piano skills, right? Like you're gonna need to spend the hours in the tool that you're gonna eventually want to use. So this is why I think that learning both is actually the most ideal, right? Because if you can learn silhouette, you can translate those skills into Nuke. Also learn Nuke so that in if your career, if you want the option to become a compositor in the future, now you um, got the hours that you need to get into um, compositing.
yeah. Well, what I usually get my students to start rotoing in Nuke. just for
Oh,
just for them to
great.
feel just for them to feel the pain. and
Yes.
then and then I show them, okay, so now that you've seen Jay says, look like you need to sign Howard for a 5-episode deal for RTC. This is almost like a UFC contract where we have five fights to to go through this
Oh, I
this
know. I
contract.
better start working out then. Get out of shape.
So yeah, basically, I asked them to start rotoring in Nuke so they can understand the limitations. And I do believe that if you can do the work in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, do it in a Nuke. Well, as a compositor, if you can do it quickly, do it in Nuke. If you're gonna spend half a day or a full day working, you need to save your brain cells and go to a different piece of software that can get it done much faster. So that's for me. For me, I prefer to teach people how to use Nuke by doing paint and prep. I
Oh
also
yeah.
I also make people paint frame by frame in Nuke just so they can understand why Silhouette is the best software for the job. So people need
Yeah,
to
for sure.
understand. I don't like to just say do it my way because that has zero value. I need to show people it's like this is not my way. It's like you have two options. One is faster, the other one is slower. You choose which one you prefer how to use, And in this case, frame by frame paint in Nuke, it's virtually impossible because the script that you have to generate, the amount of animation, you cannot even go back and fix it. It's just like so complex that you just go to Silhouette and paint it. And by the time you are setting up in Nuke, you already painted 3 frames in Silhouette. So for me, the approach is very simple. I'll show you everything, and then you choose. Sometimes in certain companies, you are not allowed to choose. You only have one software. And usually, if you have to choose, if you have to cut, you cut Silhouette, because in Nuke, apparently you can do everything. So people just say, like, well, we just use Nuke for everything. It's like, sure, fair enough. If it's a budget issue, fair enough. Like you have your choice. Now, if you are a company that has to do like a whole pipeline and you have complex roto to do, if you ask someone to spend a week working on a piece of roto during a week for a shot, if you're doing it in Nuke, you're gonna have a lot of pain to go through that. So unless you're Howard and you've been doing this for 20 years and you can actually do it in Nuke.
Yeah. I love rotoing in Nuke, so
Oh my goodness.
anyway.
I'll do an episode, Roto Labs, for for just that. You know, the comparison between the two pieces of software, and why do I
Hmm.
believe one is better than the other? Because I also believe that Nuke has some advantages in comparison with Silhouette. It's just that when you put on the scale, for me, that corner pin tool is the first one. You know, corner pin tool
Mm.
is the tool that I use the most. Being able to select a group of splines and just distort a little bit
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
shape without having to
Hmm.
move each and single one of them. Oh, Jai is saying soup versus soup challenge.
Oh,
he's
see, now
he's
I got to
going the
work
next
out.
step. He's going the next step. He's going like, well, let's do it. Let's do it live. You do.
I hear the Rocky music
Oh
playing.
my goodness, that is a different level. No. Oh, Carlos Hidrais is watching this and he's saying you guys need to do a roto shootout. Again, people
Oh,
want blood.
yeah.
See, people just want blood. We don't want blood.
Yes,
It's
yes.
like what we like to do is to explain people the options, and this is what I like to do when I'm training. I'll tell people all the different variations of roto that every single company has. So whenever they go to the industry, they go to a
Hmm.
company and they know exactly what to expect. You know,
Hmm.
this is what I like to do. I don't say do it my way. Like it's very easy.
Yes.
I'll say you choose. I'm going to show you all of them, and then you choose. But then if you choose and you are slower because of your choice, then you have to pay for the consequences of that. You know, like when
Yes,
it's
yes.
very simple, right?
Agreed,
Whenever I'm
agreed.
bidding with my leads, I'm not bidding for people to choose what they prefer. I'm bidding thinking about efficiency and thinking about, okay, an average artist, a
Yes,
mid-level artist does this in 3 days. Oh, but if he's doing
yes.
it in Nuke, maybe I need to give him an extra day. I was like, I can't think
Yeah,
about that. I need to say, okay, this is what we're thinking, and we need to implement standards for us to be using consistent tools throughout the companies and throughout the shows.
agreed.
Crazy.
Yes, that is crazy.
This is gonna be fun.
Wow, just in that last 10, 5, 10 minutes of this discussion, you've hit like five different points we could have spun off
Oh
on.
my goodness. Training. Are
So
you
many
guys doing
topics.
training? Tell me about training. Training is my dearest topic. You know, it's like the reason why I do this, why I'm still doing a roto and paint, is because of training, single handedly.
Yeah.
I choose
Well, I'm
training.
I'm really I'm really curious about your roto training program. I'm tempted to sign up just so I can learn what you're teaching the students. So I love training too, Carlos. I'm one of the joys that I get from my position is seeing young artists and young leads grow over their career and become amazing leaders, like leaders in their field. Like everyone who's, I feel like everyone who I've trained, I feel I have some small percentage of that their success where they are now is based because I helped them in some way, and through mostly training, right? So when it comes to training, I been really um, spending a lot of years about the architecture of training. There's so many, like, as you know, like teaching roto and teaching paint, there's so many entry points. Like
Oh,
where do you even begin, right? So there has to be some kind of architecture that allows you to move in a progression. So
yeah,
it's because you can't just dump a bunch of knowledge on people and expect
it's
them to be,
difficult.
instant pros like in a day. You got to ease them in. But then like what is the order of topics, right? What is the one you should start off with? And then now you also have to gauge where they are in their career. Are they mid-level? Are they
Yeah,
junior? Are they
yeah,
senior? Like, and then your program has to be robust enough to be tailored to each one of those levels, right? So cracking that code has been something that I've been working on for the last, I would say, since 2016, so almost six
yep,
years.
yep.
So I think I'm close to cracking that code, and I want to reveal it to the LinkedIn community and to the Roto community. It's not training about like specific techniques or software. It's
Yep,
training about
the theory.
almost like I think there was a yeah on the theory, like what is the things that you should know on a theoretical level, and not just not the things you should know, but it's just the structure. What is the
Yep,
sequence of things?
yep.
I think the term junior artist, mid-level artist, senior level artist, those are so like people interpret those three levels in so many different ways. Like people who say they're seniors can't, like if you give them
Oh,
a complex shot and they can't do it, and it's like, really? Are you senior? Right?
yeah.
Or so like how do we tell what is like, is there an industry standard that we can use to say, yes, these characteristics mean you're a senior artist, right? I don't think there's an agreement on that right now. I
No,
think people, they're using their salary or their years of
the years of
experience, which
experience.
is
Yeah,
not, it has nothing to do with performance. They're saying, oh, I'm making this amount of money, therefore I'm a senior artist.
yeah,
And then when you give them a senior level shot and they fail, you're like, well, where's your senior artist title now, dude? Like you failed on the shot. Now I got to reassign this to somebody else who maybe even a junior who could do the shot, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
So
Seniority for me
like
is a
training
whole
training is
different
tied
level.
into all that.
Yeah, I've been, I've been training who since my years of CG artist. So I was a CG artist in the archviz industry in Portugal,
Mm,
and I was doing it for 5 years, and I was teaching since then, and teaching it in a different way. So basically, when I started in visual effects, I went to Escape Studios in the UK, the single reference by that time, like 12 years ago. And I was very critic about the way things were being explained. Like it didn't feel like it felt. I felt like a lot of concepts was being thrown at us just to check. Check, 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 check. Complexity, a lot of complex stuff, and check, 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 check. And now you're saying, oh, now you go out there and you say to everyone that you are a compositor. I was like, whoa, what? I can't even understand half of these things. So I was very critic about this. And when I started my career, I was the only artist in the group of students that said, I want to start as a roto artist. So I'm going to be applying as a roto artist, and I did that, and I started from scratch. And since the beginning, I started with this training mentality, and after a few years, I was a roto prep supervisor, and I started training the runners. The guys that were serving coffees.
mhm.
A group of 10 people. They're like eager to learn, and I was like, well, there's not like an official way of doing this. So guys, like, do you want to do this after hours? I'll stay late, and we will train after hours. No one needs to know. We close the door, and we turn on the projector, and I'll show you everything that I know. And suddenly, after weeks, months, the guys were so competitive and they became so good that they completely obliterated the senior level artists that we had by that time. But obliterated to, like, they were faster, they were better, and they ended up being absolutely fantastic. And when the company realized, like, whoa, what happened here? When did this happen? I was like, well, I did this on my own. You didn't even pay for this. So suddenly, the company created a program to actually do this on time and follow this new generation of artists through that program and try to get them a different vision on this. But it comes out of passion. I do believe that training comes out of passion. You need to really
For sure,
enjoy
for sure.
what you're training to be able to be good. Like, you can be a really good artist and a terrible trainer. uh,
Oh
and
yeah,
and
for sure.
and that's what I try to
For
do, like,
sure.
is to explain people through passion what do they need to succeed, not just technical but also soft skills, how to deal with production, how to deal with the pressure,
Oh
what to
yes, yes.
expect. There's so many intricacies on this thing that is so difficult to understand, and only after you've been through 6 months of training, then you realize like, oh yeah, he told me that.
Hmm.
So people are
Yep.
usually aware of this. I just don't have
Yep.
time to train anymore unless I'm in a company context. And even in company context is difficult because we have so many shows to deliver. So
That's
yeah,
right. Yeah. You're too busy making shows than building your team.
it's difficult, it's difficult. So we try to
Yes.
train on the fly, We did an internship at Image Engine. We brought four young talents, and we did a few months of dedicated training. But it was just, again, a few hours every other day compared with Rotocomp that I have everyone every single day training,
Hmm.
and working on that. But basically, we at some point we have to test people on the fly and saying, look, now you have to start doing a shot. It doesn't matter if I keep throwing at you new information. You have to consolidate what you've learned until now. How do you deal
Yes,
with that?
absolutely. The application of the training is just as important. And that, again, that goes back to what, like training can, that's why I think we need to really take a hard at metrics, um, because ultimately you have to look at performance, right? I
Yeah,
think the key, like people are glossing over the performance, saying, "Oh, well, it kind of depends on how people are forming because this shot's harder, this shot's easier," and like again, yeah, I understand that, but at the end of the day, we need to have some kind of universal metric that allows you to say, "Oh, I was able to do a very complex shot," right? So if you can achieve, it's like you saying you beat the best fighter, right? And you've proved it in the ring,
yeah.
right? You can say all day long, yeah, I can knock Mike Tyson out, or I can knock out, you know, uh, with Conor McGregor, you know, but you got to prove it,
You
right?
gotta
Like you got to
exactly. You
prove
gotta
it to
prove it.
people.
You gotta have to do it, and it
So
doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. Uh, I,
yeah,
I've
exactly.
seen people calling themselves senior, and then they are not able to actually perform at that
Correct.
level. It's just like because you've been doing it for
Yes.
20 years doesn't mean you're doing it correctly, or that you will
Yes.
understand how deep you should understand this to make that judgment. And one of the examples is like this little gentleman that sent a message, enjoy guys, gotta have breakfast, like Inigo. This is one of the kids that did the course with me and came to Image Engine right
Hey,
after
Inigo.
that. So this kid, after 1 year working with me, and we did a short film as well that is on the short list for the Oscars, just
Hey,
arrived at
congrats.
at the at the company, and he is performing at the senior level. It's
Yeah.
and that's it. You get in and you're performing already at a senior level, so it's almost like not you are jumping 8 years of experience, but you've gained those 8 years of experience while you are properly training and dedicated your time to this, completely dedicated
Yes.
your time, and
Yes.
believing that actually learning roto, learning paint, learning prep, it will make you a better artist, and it will make you eventually, if you want to go there, a better compositor. And I'm pretty sure that this young gentleman is gonna be an amazing compositor. So that's it. So yeah, it's training is a very interesting topic. Again, we could stay here forever talking about it.
For sure. For sure.
Any other topic? We already reached the 2 hours. Is there anything else that you would like? Because we're gonna need another session. I'm pretty sure that
Oh,
eventually we're gonna come in again. Hopefully, now that we've dialed this the technical issues in the beginning, we're gonna have another
yeah.
session. We're gonna bring another hot bunch of topics.
I mean, we covered so many, but we haven't really d dug dove deeply
Yeah,
into any particular ones
yeah,
yet. And yeah, there's so much to talk about, Carlos. So if you're willing to have me go another round with you, I'm
absolutely.
always down for that.
Absolutely. This has been an amazing pleasure. It's really difficult to find people that are really mindful about about talking about roto and paint. They're so passionate about this. So thank you
Yes.
so much for coming in and talking about this. It's a pleasure for me.
Oh, it was a pleasure just for me too. I think, you're a great host, and I appreciate the format and the platform you're giving to the Roto community. We don't get enough love, and
That's true.
I think that this is time for us to, even if we're just talking amongst ourselves and helping us improve our own community. Hey, I'm good with that. Like, we don't need the validation from anyone outside of our community.
Exactly.
It'd be
Exactly.
nice, but we can change some of those rotos just tracing people, right?
The whole season with Howard's going to be like Lord of the Rings plus Hobbit runtime.
Oh God.
It's true,
To
right?
be honest, I liked all of those, even the Hobbits. So
Did you watch
I was
Did you watch
willing to watch
Avatar?
those. I watched everything from beginning to end, all of them. So
Did you
I'm
watch
down for it. I'm down for the marathon.
Did you watch Avatar?
Yes, I saw
Yes.
it last weekend.
What
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
controversial topic again, like because you mentioned Hobbit. Did you like the high frame rate thing again?
From I didn't really notice the high frame
Oh,
rate. Maybe it
maybe
was because I watched it in standard. I watched the standard.
okay,
I didn't
okay, okay,
watch
okay.
IMAX, or
Yeah. So
I
I
don't usually
watched
like high frame rate,
hmm
just because it's too smooth. I like the feel of the 24 frames per second,
yeah, I like the motion blur.
like kind of old school.
For
Oh, and I do
me,
like motion blur. Yeah,
exactly what I felt,
things don't look right without motion blur.
I watched Avatar 2 days ago, and the movie's beautiful. The movie's
Oh, amazing.
beautiful, and there's some plot holes. Of course, we can discuss that in a different episode. But for
Big
me,
ones.
I watched the high frame rate version, and what they're doing, they're constantly switching from high frame rate shots
Mm,
to normal shots. And I'm like, whoa, what is happening here? You see the difference straight away. And for me,
yeah,
towards the end of the show, it actually like it works fine because they've really dedicated time in perfecting that. But in the beginning of the show, a lot of shots are so sharp. They almost like have like this sharpened filter on top of it with dark edges
hmm
around everything. And I was like, oh, that is too much. That is completely unnecessary. And I feel like the motion blur brings so much to the cinematic experience.
for
It's
sure.
like it's just on the fast moving moments and everything else. Like for me, the quality of the CG is not going to be affected if it's a high frame rate or normal or 24. It's exactly the same. It all changes just when the camera moves or when the objects move. But for me, it completely draw my attention from the shots. They were normal. From the shots, they were high frame rate. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa! What is happening here, guys? Just
Yeah, I
just
could see that.
decide what you want. And for me, it felt like I was watching TV with the motion flow turned on.
Uh-huh.
I
hmm
hate that. That's the first thing I do on the TVs is to turn that off because I felt again that I was in a soap opera. It's just like it was a really good soap opera.
Well, I have this feeling, like, at least for me, I reject high frame rate, like, instinctually. Like, I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
I mean, not even like 1 second of high frame rate. Like, I went over to my friend's house, and they had Home Alone with a high frame rate,
Oh,
and I was like, "Oh, nice one. 60 frames per second equals more frames to
more
roto, and
frames to
that's
roto.
bang on." So that's another reason why I hate high frame rate. So, but yeah, I when we saw Home Alone with high frame rate, I was like,
Oh,
"Ooh, what is this movie? Like, I don't want to see this." Like, so I walked out of the room. I didn't say anything, because that I didn't be very ungracious as a visitor, but I had to walk out of the room and do something else
it's a
because I
weird
couldn't watch it.
experience, right? And
Yeah,
and this to me is still not nailed. Like there is no reason to do that. To show off your
yeah,
CG, you don't need to do 48 frames per second. You don't have to. You don't have to because the CG will speak for itself. It's all about the realism and the how immersive the experience is. And for me, that high frame rate is not immersive at all. You know, it almost looks like a game.
Yeah.
You know, I'm playing a game, and I don't
Yeah.
want to be playing a game while I'm watching a 3-hour movie. I want to be just inside that movie and enjoying what is happening in there, with the motion blur, with the mistakes, with that softness, even
Yeah.
that is supposed to be there. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Just
I didn't think you can get you. I didn't think you can be too much. It have too much detail in the movie, but then I saw high frame rate, and I'm like, yeah, that's too
oh
much detail.
yeah, if you watch Avatar in HFR, it's going to be exactly that. It's too much. You know,
Yeah.
it's too much, but it's beautiful.
Yep.
It was a beautiful movie. Really
Yeah.
and
Now
really
now
enjoyed.
you make me want to go watch it in IMAX.
Oh, that is a different story. I would like to
Yeah.
watch it in IMAX, but the old IMAX in the UK, the film IMAX.
The
That
real one.
the real one,
Not the Limax.
not the IMAX. Like the other IMAXs
Yeah.
is completely pointless because it's not really like the aspect ratio is not even the same. So I've watched
Yeah.
when I was working in London. I watched several movies, including The Dark Knight Rises. Was my first movie, the one that I've started my career in visual effects. It was The Dark Knight
Ooh,
Rises,
nice.
and that
Great
was
film.
70 millimeter film. So
Mm.
they shoot in 70 mil, they scan into 5.6K. We've
Ooh,
worked in
great.
5.6K, and this was
Ooh.
10 years ago. We pretty much could
Ooh.
only load 10, 20 frames at a time in the
Wow.
softwares to start rotoing, and then basically they would render it out, and they would reproject that in film, in 70 millimeter film. So then you
Mm.
would go to the theater, and you are watching film, and the aspect ratio of that, the detail was unbelievable. Like there was the first moment in a cinema that I was like, because it's crazy. Like it's a crazy experience, and I never had that effect ever again, after
Wow. I
watching
need to
real
go see
IMAX.
that in the film version now, the 70 mil version.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. And they have jumps from scope to IMAX. They had because
Okay.
they couldn't film everything in IMAX. They destroyed a
Yes,
camera,
too bad.
one of the 3 cameras that existed in the world. They destroyed one of them,
Wow.
and they ended up just shooting part of the movie in IMAX. But like you are literally watching a scope movie, and suddenly there's a whole sequence where you see the world, and it was
Yeah.
taller
Yeah.
than like
Yep.
the height is bigger than the width. So it
Yeah.
was like a really like top to bottom experience of like looking at the image, and it was almost like there's so much information in there that is being captured that you are trying to figure out what is happening. It was beautiful, beautiful. Anyway, completely side topic of everything that we've talked until now.
Yes.
um, I shall see you again. Shall we say that?
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Carlos. I really appreciate this opportunity to kind of just spew my opinions about Roto.
And thank you so much for the work that you've been doing. I've been following that, and I'm always very curious whenever you post something new. I always go there, and I leave my comment. But it's
I
gonna
appreciate
be
it.
it's gonna be fun. Greg is always out there sending messages as well. Greg would be fun to
I love
be
Greg. We
to
should
be
get
in.
Greg on this show too.
Maybe on the next one we invite Greg as well, and we do the 3 of us. Let's see. Let's see.
Yeah,
Let's see.
that'd be great.
That'll be fun. Let's talk with him and say if he would be up to the challenge.
I hope he says yes.
All right. Let's see. Let's see. All right. Thank you so much. 2 hours and 15 minutes of this with some technical issues in the beginning. But again, episode 1. Thank you so much for rolling with the punches, and I'll see you. I'll see you soon.
Thanks to our audience for sticking with us too.
All right. Bye bye. See you.
Bye bye.